We're speaking really following the release of Professor Curran's report on, broadly speaking, on climate change and the future plan for the Isle of Man, really, and of course the response from the Council of Ministers. Your initial reactions, really, is it what you expected would come from that 6-month period of work?
Yeah, I mean, initial thoughts, I do receive this quite positively. The report is detailed and it's thorough, and the Comin response, the action plan that Comin have drawn up, is quite comprehensive. And I do applaud the Chief Minister's promise to embrace the ambition of Curran's report. I think that there are some points to work upon. For example, in Curran's report, he gives 2 pathways, which is a higher ambition pathway or a lower ambition pathway. And Comin's response doesn't give any indication of which pathway they're going to actually choose to follow. So I think it's really important that we obviously opt for the higher ambition pathway as a minimum, with a commitment to progress in line with science on this. So one major point as well with regards to the target of net zero by 2050. It's a bit of a confusing one. One key point from the IPCC report of October 2018 is that the target of net zero by 2050, or what I'll call 050 from now on, actually only gives us a 50% chance at best of limiting global warming to 1.5. So that's clearly not enough. So the target of 050, as far as I'm concerned, does need to be, it's fine as a starting point, but that's all it can be, and it needs to be adjusted and become more ambitious as we further ourselves along this pathway. From MLP's perspective, from the Manx Labour Party's perspective, I do really welcome the Chief Minister's point that we don't want this transformation to affect the most vulnerable, and that he wants to ensure that the most vulnerable in our society aren't negatively impacted by this transition. But for me, I think that needs to be taken a little bit further in terms of ensuring that it doesn't negatively impact the ordinary worker, the ordinary person in the street. So I'd like to see a commitment on that. And there's already a plan that covers that and more in the Green New Deal, which obviously the Manx Labour Party have passed as a policy resolution. And I'd very much like to see Green New Deal principles being advocated in order to ensure, as I say, that the ordinary working person isn't being negatively impacted. So yes, it's a definite and welcome move in the right direction. But there's a lot of room for improvement even at this stage. And we're nowhere near the finishing line, and we have to accept that finish line is ever moving.
We've heard from a few of the people involved in the project that this is kind of laying the foundations for future action, if you like. And the Chief Minister gave some reassurances that the investment in this transition won't impact on other serious policies in the programme for government. Is that a concern for the Manx Labour Party? Do you think that the money has to come from elsewhere, if you like?
So
in order to finance, I mean, we're talking about £10 million a year for the first year, and then 25 million is recommended per year from thereafter. Where does that money come from, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot of, there's going to have to be an awful lot of focus on realigning funds and ensuring that all of our public services as they stand remain as viable and actually do deliver the service that they're supposed to be providing for the Manx people. I think that the elephant in the room when it comes to funding is always tax from a Manx Labour Party perspective. Any financial burden of increased taxes will have to be shouldered by the top end of the financial spectrum, and that's something that we would be advocating if the government are looking to taxation in order to fund the transformation.
That is something that's brought up by a lot of sceptics about climate change, is that it's another way of taxing society and another pretty serious expenditure from government. I suppose the Manx Labour Party would probably argue it's a necessary one.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, we've always been in line with the current science, with the science on this whole issue, which has been telling us for decades, absolutely decades, that human activity is causing an increase in atmospheric carbon, which is therefore causing the Earth's surface to get hotter. So that's really not questionable. The science is absolutely crystal clear on this. There is pretty much 100% consensus on that now. There's no question that this isn't a necessary transition. The question is how we fund it, and we do need to ensure that, first of all, we take the right decisions at this point in order to ensure that we will have economic benefits from the transformation, and in order to ensure that any economic fallout will not be shouldered by the ordinary working person.
Where does the Manx Labour Party take this next? Do you plan to lobby MHKs before the debate in Tynwald this month? Do you think there's more work to be done on that front, or is it more a case of see what happens and then react from there?
I think at this point, I'm very keen to know what direction Tynwald want to take this. So, as I say, at the moment, we're not clear on which pathway the Council of Ministers is advocating from Curran's report. And we don't actually know. I think we're getting a flavour, but we can't say that we know which direction the whole of Tynwald will vote on the 21st of January this year. So I think at this point it's trying to get more of an idea of how Tynwald overall feel about this report and the response of the Council of Ministers, and then getting a response about how individual politicians feel, and to take it from there.
We saw during these debates in the summer last year, Laurie Hooper tried to put an amendment forward to bring the date for net carbon neutrality forward by 15 years to 2035, struggled to gain the majority of support in Tynwald. Would you like to see that kind of idea explored again? You said about the drawbacks perhaps that you feel there are with a 2050 aspiration.
Yeah, definitely. We'll have to look at that target. I see that target as being a starting point, really. It's not in line with the science. The science tells us that gives us, at very best, a 50% chance of limiting warming. Is that the legacy that we want to leave? We wouldn't gamble our children and grandchildren's future on the flip of a coin. We need to have more of a certainty than a 50% at best chance. So I do think that we will be having to advocate very strongly for a sooner and earlier date as a target for net zero, and giving the scientific reasons for that.